grants, many of which you might have heard about. It's Creative Armenia AGBU Fellowships in partnership with AGBU, through which we have been supporting in a year-long basis 7 artists, creative talents. It's East-West residency, through which we have been sending creative talents to their creative residency in Brussels, and Artists for Artsakh program, which has been giving out creative grants for projects to raise awareness about Artsakh, and Spark grants, about which we have made an announcement just 2 days ago during our first day of the panel, giving out Spark grants to artists who are now creating impactful projects across the art fields. In the last 3 days of our panel, we have talked with creative patrons, with creative artists, towering artists, and also Creative Armenia's board members, many of which have been supporting Creative Armenia's mission of championing art and creative talents. And here now I'm with 4 of those artists, incredible talents who have been pushing the boundaries of Armenian culture. And I want to welcome Ophelia Grigoryan and Nairi Khachaturian, NEVEART Yerkanyan. And today we're going to lift the curtain and get into the creative minds and works of this artist. So yeah, here we are. Welcome everyone. And I'm going to raise my question and introduce our first panelist, who is Ophelia Grigoryan. So hi, Ophelia, and thanks for joining us today. So Ophelia Grigoryan is an Armenian-American writer and journalist. In 2016, Ophelia moved to Luxembourg to work on her debut novel, The Ghost Soldier, and it's a historical novel about 2 Armenian-American soldiers fighting in the German troops, fighting against the Germans in the Second World War. And Ophelia is also the founder of the International Armenian Literary Alliance, and is also the 2021 Creative Armenia AGBU Fellow. Welcome, Ophelia, and we're happy to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so my first question that I wanted to ask you is about your novel, because the idea of the novel is so gripping. And I know that you have come across this story in a very interesting way. So I wanted to tell us about how you came upon the real story, and then how did you decide to pick it up and transform it into literary work?
Sure. My grandfather had Alzheimer's about a decade ago, and I was writing down funny things that he said, because he just completely lost his filter. And so I had all of these, interesting anecdotes, but not a narrative thread to put it together into a novel. And he was an architect, and his best friend was an engineer. They grew up in the Bronx together. And I heard about the Ghost Army on a podcast, this artistic deception unit that used inflatable tanks and guns and radio transmissions and sound effects to create the illusion of the American army where it wasn't. And I just thought I could put these 2 stories together. And the more research I did, I found that there were a number of Armenian Americans who were recruited for the Ghost Army. And so I put these 2 characters into that role, and it's come farther and farther from my family's story, but it still has some of the historical context, background.
So you reflect them in Sevan and Manuk's character. And I know that you have agreed to read a little excerpt of the novel, so I want to ask you if you may read us a little bit from the novel.
Sure. So my novel begins in 1944 in New York. Sevan, the main character, has just withdrawn his acceptance to college to study architecture, because his father has just died and he can't afford it anymore. So he has to work in a butcher shop. And this is, I'll just share with you a brief excerpt, a few scenes in. Sevan's feet swept through the sawdust carpeting the floor as he entered the meat locker. His arms prickled. His hired had spent so much time here that Sevan looked for him now amid the splayed beef carcasses hanging from the ceiling, a smile flashing under his black mustache as he asked what Sevan's teacher thought of his latest design. Manuk stood, knees bent, his dark eyes slivered as he tried to lift a carcass onto one of the metal hooks. Despite the messy work, he was neatly dressed, as always, his hair slicked back with so much pomade that it crunched if you tried to bend it. Like Sevan, the olive skin on Manuk's face had been darkened with stubble years before fine hairs appeared on their classmates' upper lips. But while Sevan's face was round and plump, embarrassingly cherubic in a swarthy way, Manuk's was angular, punctuated by a stubborn nose and a scar above his right eye from being shoved into the school bleachers in 8th grade. Sevan came beside him, a few inches taller than his friend. At 6 feet, Sevan was tall for an Armenian. I got it. With little effort, he lifted the carcass so it latched onto the hook. At school, Manuk would have protested if Sevan made him look weak in front of the other boys, but here, alone in the meat locker, Manuk thanked him. So, you did it? Sevan nodded slowly, turning to another carcass so he wouldn't have to look Manuk in the eye. The skinned meat was slippery against his fingers as he lifted the carcass onto a hook by himself. Manuk's heavy breathing calmed, and he handed Sevan another and another. They worked without speaking until they were surrounded by dangling corpses. Thank you. You're on mute, Anush.
Sorry. Yeah. I was saying thank you for the beautiful piece, and I really love your metaphors, the embarrassingly cherubic face, and you also reflect a lot about the Armenian conflict of how to stay together, and then of the younger generation of how they are leaving the nest in a way, and being influenced by the outside world, growing up in another country, and it's really interesting. And so I have a question which is like worrying me for years, and I think it's also might be the case that interests you. So growing up, we are very much interested, and we read a lot about the giants of the world literature, and then we also love the Armenian literature, national literature, but these two are like separate, and Armenian characters are usually remaining in the Armenian context, but that's not the case in your novel, and you seem to have found the silver lining of bringing the Armenian story into the into a wider world. And I was wondering how you have done that, how you have achieved that in your novel, and also how you think Armenian authors should reflect and refract their identity in their works.
Well, I don't think writers should write a story with the, because it's going to sell or not sell or speak to a certain people or not. I think writing a book-length work is such a long process that you have to be really passionate about what you're going to spend years writing and rewriting and revising. And so, but, that said, I do think you need to think about who your intended audience is. If you have, if you're writing solely for an Armenian community, you don't have to explain so much. You can assume your readers probably know where the history and experiences your characters have gone through. But I'm sure that's liberating in a way. But I think if you're writing for a wider audience, you have to explain, some of what these characters have been through and the historical background they have, but to doing so in a subtle way, where you're not sort of feeding the reader information is difficult, and it's about finding that balance, I think. And it's a tough thing to do, but an important one.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And I think that there is a power in presenting the Armenian struggle in the background of your novel, because in that way it becomes a truth and part of life, rather than in the foreground as a statement. Yeah, thank you, Olivia. And we are going to pass now to Naidi, our second panelist, and I'm going to introduce her, and then I'll ask my question. So Naidi is a Paris-born curator working in the fields of contemporary art, design, and cultural heritage. Based in Yerevan since 2015, she has curated numerous exhibitions, such as Nega Design Pavilion, Up Design Pavilion, and then Diligent Arts Observatory, and many more. She's the founding director of the AHA Collective, with which she is curating a number of art initiatives with local and international artists. And she's also our 2021 Creative Armenia AGBU Fellow. Welcome, Heidi, and yeah, welcome to Lifting the Curtain panel. So one of the things that I find interesting in your curatorial work is that you are creating the space and the stage, but then artists are performing in that. And so it seems that your relationship with the artist must be a close one, and a lot depends on that relationship. So I know that you have talked a lot about the collective genius idea, the idea of collective genius, and have working through it. So I'm wondering how you are creating that space for the artist. How are you creating the space of collective genius? And another question is it easier or difficult with Armenian artists?
It's exciting with the Armenian artists. Well, thank you for inviting me to join this conversation with great artists. Yeah, my approach is to really build a strong relationship with artists, because I really think that the curator and the curatorial practice is closely linked to the way one works with the artist. So what I've tried to do since 5-6 years is to establish deep relationships. And sometimes the artworks that get created is an individual artwork. So it's an artist's solo exhibition, but sometimes there are themes or practices that are shared among different artists at a certain period of time, and that brings to a collective exhibition. So I really want to push forward both directions, but of course what we need right now is to gather and work towards a certain mission collectively. So that's why, like, the more recent exhibitions that I've curated or co-curated are collective exhibitions.
Okay. And also, you have education in entrepreneurship, and you have a background in entrepreneurship. And many of your works, such as the Up Pavilion, Up Design Pavilion, and also the I think Neshka Design Pavilion, they are leaning towards more of a commercial art, but that's not usually how we think of art. We think art should be in just the exhibited, and doesn't need to bring us profit or have commercial value. But that's not the way, you know, the innovative art thinkers are thinking about. So I'm wondering, how do you think our Armenian art should be innovated, and how can art have a commercial or profitable potential?
I think what's really important is to establish a healthy ecosystem. And in any ecosystem, you have the commercial aspect as well. Beside the artistic, the educational, the scientific, the commercial aspect also exists, of course, to some extent. So I think there are different ways to strengthen and make the ecosystem healthier, but there are really great examples happening now in Yerevan, where different alternative spaces that are business oriented are offering a space for artists, for designers to produce works that are for sale. Some have been produced in a limited quantity, so limited edition of art or design products. Some are more mass products, and some are also born from collaboration between an artist and a craftsman. So I think this is a really nice movement that's taking place, and especially when those collaborations are between Yerevan-based artists or designers and craftsmen who are creating the product in the regions. So this way we also decentralize the production and creative process.
Yeah, that's interesting, and yeah, it's important. So I'm going to pass to our next panelist, who is Ophelia, and she seems to drop out a little, so we'll get to her because we have caught her now. So Ophelia is a filmmaker, and her films have played at major film festivals such as Venice, Sundance, TIFF, South by Southwest, and so on. Ophelia has produced with Oscar-winning filmmaker Alex Gibney's feature films Citizen K and also Crazy Not Insane for HBO. Most recently, Ophelia has also created, co-directed, and also produced with Alex Gibney and Suzanne Hillinger the COVID-19 documentary, Totally Under Control. And Ophelia, we're happy to have you here. So,
thank you. Yeah. I'm so sorry for my connectivity issues. I am in Armenia and I tried 3 different Wi-Fis and now on my phone. So I'm really sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. It's Murphy's Law, right? What can go wrong will go wrong. Totally, I want to talk a little about Totally Under Control. So it's your most recent directorial work, and I think you have produced it and you have released it around the time of the U.S. presidential election. So you must have had a very limited time for creating it. So I wonder what the whole process of the creation was. Can you tell us a little about it?
Yeah. So we made the film start to finish in 5 months, which is the fastest timeline I've ever had on a documentary feature film. The idea came to us in April when New York was living through the worst of the pandemic. I mean, I live in New York, and New York was the epicenter, and I lived next to a hospital, and I saw the freezers outside the hospitals for the bodies because the hospitals were just overwhelmed. So, both Alex and Suzanne are also New York and New Jersey based. So everyone was just kind of feeling this, wanting to do something about it, because we, as filmmakers, especially as documentary filmmakers, you want to document. That's especially when major events like this are happening. So we started in May and released the film in October, and it was an insane schedule and timeline. But the goal from the beginning was to release the film before the elections, because we felt it was important to share with the general public the information that we had gathered and researched about the handling of the pandemic by the Trump administration. And we felt it was important for them to see the film before casting a vote. So in a way, we set ourselves for a crazy timeline, but we delivered, and we hope that people were a bit more educated when they were making a very important decision.
Yeah. So, of course, there is the social issue at the core of the film. And so having that in mind, creating art that eventually leads to social change has always been around historically. But creating art that is advocating social change is relatively new phenomena, and it's beginning and it's beginning to be more and more part of the fabric of our creative process. So I wonder if you think that sometimes the advocacy and the intention of doing a social change sometimes gives the artist yourself a little constraint or limitations in terms of artistic aspiration. Do you think that's the case? And do you think artists should have that role of being the social change maker?
I think with documentary films, it is a little bit intertwined, because you are filmmakers, but also a little bit of journalists, depending on what kind of documentary films you make. So in a way, you are researching and you are learning about a topic. You're in a way becoming a mini expert, and you're sharing this information with the general public. Sometimes the film will come to you as a story. You want to tell a story. And then if in the process you end up also making a change that's or changing someone's mind, that's great. Sometimes it comes as a need to talk about a certain topics or certain thing that you feel strongly about. You you can make a film like The Inconvenient Truth with Al Gore, and the film can actually, the film was released more than 10 years ago, 15 maybe, and it was a huge change, for example, in how people talk about climate change. That film specifically was a documentary. I think it won the Oscar, but if you look at it, it's a very different documentary. It's a lot of PowerPoint presentations and Al Gore talking, but it really made an impact and made a change. And so, you can make a film like that that was set from the beginning to raise the issue of climate change, or you can tell a story. And if your story resonates with someone, that can also make a difference. I don't think that, at least I don't think it constrains me, in a box or something like that. I actually love that aspect of documentary filmmaking, that you can actually make a difference. You can actually tell a story that you care about, and maybe I'm sorry if you can hear my niece shouting, and actually change someone's mind about something. But you can also do that with fictional filmmaking. I love stories that make people think after they leave the cinema. I found that camera and video and storytelling is this very strong tool, especially for our generation. And I think if we can use it to tell stories and make a change, then why not?
Yeah, that's true. And even we, because we are having all these programs, and many of our applicants are submitting projects, and their projects are reflecting on the situation of women in Armenia, or the Artsakh war. And so it's becoming growingly becoming part of how artists even think about creation and creative process. That's interesting. So we're going.
It's hard to tell stories about Armenia and not have them be kind of about some kind of a social issue. I would love to make some very lighthearted comedy one day, and just not have any issues in it. But we are where we are, and we got to use this tool to tell Armenian stories and fix some issues in here.
That actually connects to our panel of yesterday with Arsene Khanjian and Otome Goyan, who were discussing exactly that issue, that for us it's even kind of a responsibility of telling our stories, even if we have other stories in our minds that we would like to tell. But there is this urgency telling the Armenian story, the Armenian struggle, through cinema or literature or other art forms. So we are going to pass to our next panelist, who is NEVEART Yerganyan. And NEVEART, hi, it's really nice to have you here with us. So NEVEART is a visual artist and curator. She is the co-founder and curator of Y Graphic Design Festival in Florence, and co-founder of the AGZ Space and Curatorial Arts Collective. Her works have appeared in The Guardian, Arc Daily, Design Boom, and many more. NEVEART was also the 2020 Creative Armenia AGBU Fellow, and we're really glad to have you here. So,
thanks, Anush, for having me.
So my first question is connected to your graphic series about the architectural monuments of Armenia, and they have really become iconic. So, and I know that you have spent 3 or 4 years at least working on this series. 5 years, right? And so I wanted to ask you, how did you start working on those series, and how did that commitment develop of spending 5 years on a project is quite commitment. So what was it that triggered you and kept you going all that way?
Well, first of all, it was my personal adoration for modernist architecture. I have architectural background. My first profession is architecture, and when I was studying graphic design in Florence, during those days, the Writers' Resort in Sevan got a special research fund from Getty Institute, and I was very happy with this news, and we had an assignment, so it was a student project. I did an first illustration as a student project, and then I decided to make a series out of it. I didn't tend to make a big project, but I thought, okay, once in a while I will do an illustration. It makes me happy, and I practice my skills. But then when I really understood that this is growing into something bigger, the main motivation was firstly to raise awareness about this this heritage, because it is not really appreciated as it should be, and to document them in the way that they do not appear to us anymore, because most of them are either destructed already, or they are deteriorated, they are not used, abandoned. So I wanted to remind everyone how powerful they are and how important they are. Not only to the international public, but also in Armenia, because I think, first of all, it should be appreciated in Armenia. And then there was also another aspect to it. I wanted also to question the future, to provoke a question of that we had this heritage and we are almost losing it. And are we able to create architectural monuments that are as powerful as this were? And because we don't see much new architecture in Armenia that has this this statement, you know, these architectural monuments, they were giving a message to the public back then in Soviet times. They had a futuristic intentions, and today we don't see many examples like this in Armenia. So it was also kind of provocation and reminder. You're on mute, Anush.
Okay. Yeah, that's exactly right. And many of the buildings that you have depicted in your works, they are kind of already ghost buildings in a way. The youth palaces, the diving tower of Echmiadzin is, and many others are. So yes, so they are kind of starring in your works, but they, in actual life, they are like ghosts, and they are living in the memories of the people and mostly seniors. And I know that you're doing some kind of a project to document those memories. But how do you think, the new generation, the young generation of artists collectively, what is the steps that they need to take to take this project, or to take the awareness of the importance of these architectural monuments to the next level, to preserve and to even revive in a way?
For many years, especially the architectural community have been working towards this, raising awareness and trying to reach governments to ask them to preserve this, to give importance to at least some of these monuments, because some are really iconic. And for example, the Cinema Moscow Open Air Hall was listed in the governmental monuments list, but then one night it was out because church decided to rebuild the Peter's church there that was destroyed during the Soviet times. But I mean, artists, I don't know, we can still do projects and raise awareness, do exhibitions, use these spaces, show that they are still functional, but still we don't have a proper policy of preserving this architectural heritage. There is not much that artists can do, except documenting and doing alternative projects there.
Yeah, and creating new architectural monuments, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So another question that I have is, you and many of others here are very active also politically, and you're raising questions, and you're doing an activist work. So how do you think that artists can also be activists, and is there any way is there any artistic way or creative way of doing the activist work?
Yes, I wouldn't connect much my personal activist experience to art, though sometimes they were really connected, but I was not doing it as an artist. I was more doing it as a citizen, and I didn't want it to instrumentalize art for that. But it's been done for years in all the world, and our art is a very strong tool to make the problems and issues heard by others. It's a matter of choice. Not every artist wants to do it, but once you do it, it's really stronger.
Yeah. So I want to do a segue and ask a question from the audience, which is, I think, refers to all of you. So we can go. Yeah, you can all respond to that. What has been your motivation, the big goal behind your creative work, and what should you achieve to truly consider yourself successful? This is the part of picking into your minds. I think Olivia can start.
Sure. What do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, so what is your big motivation, a big goal behind your creative work, and what should you achieve to really consider yourself a successful artist?
I think my goal has always been, and I've always loved since I was a kid, to tell stories. One of my goals now, and just, since we're talking about how activism plays a role in our art, one of my goals now is to, in my new work, focus on environmental stories and, bring to light stories of environmental injustice that, we may not necessarily all know about. But second part of the question was when do we consider ourselves successful? It's being a writer is, it's hard to, if you wait until you are published or have won awards, or, you may be waiting a very long time, and you may never find yourself satisfied. So I think writing stories that move people and, satisfy your creative urges is important, and it's what I aim to do. I think coming to your desk every day with the same passion and energy for your work, you have to enjoy that daily process and struggle. And often it is a struggle, but you have to enjoy that process, or else, the recognition may come and go, but it is very fleeting. And so,
yeah, that's exactly right. And related to that question is, I wanted to mention that you also have opened Armenian Literary Alliance really recently. And so can you talk a little about that, and what are your what kind of programs you have, and what is your mission? Because I know that you also have open calls, so many of our listeners might want to know how to join. And
sure. So I started the International Armenian Literary Alliance to bring Armenian writers together and to support Armenian writers. There isn't really a platform, at least in the diaspora, to support writers through promoting their work, supporting the creation of work through funding, and so. Over the last year or so, I and several other writers have worked to create a mentorship program. Submissions for that are now open, so that emerging writers can work with an established author for 2 months this summer, and then hopefully every year for eternity. So to sort of, get guidance from someone who's been through the publishing and writing and publishing process, but also get guidance from someone who will read your work already having an Armenian perspective and knowing the context and can help you navigate your writing that way. But we're also having a number of readings and events to give writers, to showcase writers and their work, and give them sort of a spotlight to share what they're doing with the wider community. And then hopefully we will be able to fund translation projects from Armenian into English and English into Eastern and Western Armenian, and fund projects in English. So there's a lot we want to do, and there's a lot we have coming up. We're working hopefully with Oxford University to have to put on an essay contest this summer. So stay tuned.
Yeah, the organization is rising, and we wish you all the luck. And also, looking forward to your to the publication of your novel. And so, so maybe NEVEART can chime in and answer to that question of how when would you consider yourself successful, and what is it that you need to achieve? And
I don't know. I don't really like the word success. I don't know what success is. When I do my work and I feel satisfied, I don't know. When I feel that I've done something that I liked, maybe that's what success is. I don't know. Or I don't know. All these buzz about awards and being famous and stuff like that. I've never been into that. So I think I consider myself as successful as happy I am with what I do, because once you are not enjoying anymore your work, then even if you are famous and stuff like that, I don't know if you can consider yourself successful. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna ask Heidi another question, which is, in your opinion,
you don't want me to talk about success?
No, I mean you can, if you want to.
No, but because the other panelists are artists and producing artworks, maybe my perspective is a bit different, because I'm building a bridge between them and the public as a curator. I wouldn't use the word success, but I would rather maybe use the word impact. And I think an exhibition or an art project, an initiative is impactful from a curator's perspective if, of course, I could talk about with quantitative data. Of course, the more public and visitors an exhibition or any event has, the better, because the more that story, that artwork is shared. But I think it would be wiser to talk from a qualitative perspective, and think that an exhibition or any art project is impactful if the public and yourself and the artist are sharing a common ground, a common platform throughout that exhibition. And in that common ground and platform, the questions that are raised by the artist and the artwork that's exhibited are part of a discussion. So I think the impact, if I would want to kind of dig into the impact of my work, or success in parentheses, I would really look into that perspective. Are we, with the society, with the public who has come to this exhibition, are we on the same ground and discussing those questions that are raised through the artist's eyes, hands, and...
And another question related to that, to what you said, is coming from another listener, and it's what ideas and trends excite you most about the new generation of Armenian artists?
again, I wouldn't put myself into the trends. I'm not. I don't think I'm a trendsetter or following a certain trend. What I really like is those are. I mean, I really work with those artists who are pursuing in a very deep manner their own practice. So if they work with one material, one art form, and they dig into that, I really enjoy, and that's what excites me, because I see how the artist wants to push the limitations of that material or art form, and always tries to find new ways to express himself or herself through that same material. So that's really something that excites me. But of course, I really enjoy, and that's the environment where I've been raised, when artists or a group of collective works together in a multidisciplinary way. So I really enjoy that, and it excites me, and I try to bring my share of knowledge or practice into that.
Yeah. And there is your collective genius. Yeah. So before I ask Ophelia another question from our listener, I'm going to say just a compliment coming to NEVEART from Armenian Grigoryan, for whom you are already famous, and she has 3 pieces of your works on her wall. So yeah, Ophelia, a question coming from Tatevi Galasian. In your opinion, what is the biggest challenge for the artists today?
In general, the artists?
Yeah. Or filmmaker in your case?
Yeah, I think because I can maybe talk from my perspective as a filmmaker, because art is a very, there's so many disciplines, but I think film is the most expensive medium out of all arts. You know, I think maybe, I mean, NEVEART can correct me if I'm wrong, but she doesn't need a lot of materials to create her art. We do need a lot of equipment and lights and camera and crew and locations, and so it's a very big, it's a very expensive art. I think what I love seeing is just more and more people, younger generation, trying to kind of break out and maybe try to do some new work with iPhones and just like little gadgets and trying to tell their stories without needing a lot of money and crew. But that's very hard and very limiting. Obviously, film, you know, we love to watch quality films, etc. So I think the biggest challenge, honestly, has always been the funding and getting projects going. And I think the challenge for Armenian filmmakers is just that, and I'm seeing a lot of progress, obviously, with different funds, including Creative Armenia, kind of giving that little bit of push to the younger generation, to the younger artists, like helping them to at least do their first thing or their second thing, so that they can then later get out and get more money for bigger projects. But I think convincing people that you can do something is always the hardest thing, and you always kind of need that first thing to prove that you can do the second thing, and so it's always this cycle. So, you know, that obviously is always a challenge. I'm trying to think, but I don't know if that answers the question. I'm sorry, like midpoint for that. I think the question was, what is the biggest challenge, right?
Yeah. Well, it does answer the question. And I wonder what's the challenge for others, like NEVEART can, well, it's not the finances or the equipment, but there definitely is something else that is challenging.
Yeah, there are many challenges.
By the way, I didn't want to diminish NEVEART's work. She obviously needs money to live as a human being, but what I was trying to say, like, for example, Olivia can just sit down at her computer and write and like taking a brush and a paper, and it's like film is a little, it's just like a different level of craziness. Yeah, sorry. I'm gonna shut up now.
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't be able to live the life of the filmmaker. But if you are a freelancer, if you are an artist who has to make a living, you have many challenges, starting from that you have to do your bookkeeping and work with clients, do all the communication, do your promotion, and still do what you love, not start to lower your quality of work just because you need to do many projects. It's there are so many challenges, especially I think in Armenia, that the sphere is not well developed. Like the communication with clients can be very exhausting. Also problems with copyright. There's so many layers. And if you are just starting and you haven't been working in an agency and you are just a young student finishing your university and diving into the professional world, it's very tough, especially also yesterday there was a question to Atom and Arsina saying why Armenian parents are discouraging their children to go into art. Also with graphic design and illustration, parents want their kids to do real job, to become doctors and lawyers and teachers, and art is considered something that you will not make a living out of it, and it's not serious.
Yeah, that's right.
And when you don't have support from your family and friends, it's very hard to find courage and pursue your dreams.
Yeah, unless you brave your way through it. And another question is, many of you here, besides being artists, you're also doing the art management work. So Olivia, for example, with the International Armenian Literary Alliance, and you yourself, NEVEART, you're organizing the Wide Graphic Design Festival. Well, and Naidi has AHA Collective, and Ophelia has her own production. So how do you balance between being an artist and being also art manager? And do you think one limits the other, or do you think one is like providing even more resources and more agency for you to realize your creative projects? I think anyone who wants to start, yeah.
I can jump in. Though you may hear my daughter yelling in the background, and that's another thing that we're juggling a lot of different things, and I think finding that quiet time where you can turn off the internet and turn off your phone, and sort of forcing yourself to do that is so important, so you can work in my case, so I can write, but in others' cases work on their art without sort of all the noise is really important. But I think that for me, starting the International Armenian Literary Alliance has connected me to so many people with interesting stories and perspectives, and that those relationships are so beneficial. Even if it's someone just saying, have you read this book? And I've never heard of that. Let me read it, and maybe that inspires me to write something else. But those kinds of connections are really important. I think as writers and as artists, we all have to support each other. Otherwise, it's we're just doing this alone in our pajamas, in my case. So for me, it takes a lot of work, and as NEVEART was saying, there's bookkeeping and answering emails and this and that. It doesn't always feel productive, and sometimes feels like it's taking away from the actual process of making new art. But at the same time, they're just absolutely invaluable relationships that come from that.
Yeah. Okay.
I would continue what Olivia says and just say that art management helps to widen your network. And when you widen your network, you can have new connections with new people where you can then develop your artistic practice. So even though it takes a lot of time and you have to be very rigorous in your work in the art management, like sector, but it really creates a wider network of practitioners, and then when you click with one of them, you can then pursue your artistic practice, for example, for a new project, a new collaboration. So that's the really great part of also doing that part of the work.
Yeah, that's interesting. And we ourselves, like, we are receiving many applications from artists, and many Armenian artists, for example, have trouble of constructing an application that is really impressive, even though they can be really great artists. And so I think having that perspective of an art manager can also really inspire and stimulate your work as a creative person, because you know all the tools and all the ways of how to present yourself and how to be even more powerful as an artist. And so we have another question coming from a really great Armenian writer, Dana Walrath, and she's asking you, congratulations to all you powerful, talented, independent-minded Armenian women. Might you speak about whether you have faced specific issues as women in the arts? Haha, a tough question.
Well, before others answer, I just want to say that I love the fact that this is a panel just about the future of art, not about women in the arts, but we all happen to be women. I think that's fantastic, and I'm honored to be here with all of you, including Anushka, who is a writer herself.
Thank you. So anyone? Hi, it's the hardest question, huh? Okay.
I think I wouldn't say that I have had issues from that perspective, and in the contrary, maybe it's the difference of sensibilities that also attracts others to collaborate with women. So in Armenia, I haven't had, in France neither, but I haven't had that issue in my work. And I think the difference in the sensibilities is something very enriching, and that we have to foster.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, I think this would be a wrap. Thank you everyone for joining us. It was really lovely meeting and speaking about the state of art and your work today. I want to thank our audience for their questions and want to tell them also that our next event and our last event will be tomorrow, same place and same time, and it's going to be about how to break into Hollywood, featuring Seb Ohanyan, Michael Gurdjian, and an array of other artists. So don't forget and join us tomorrow, same time, same place. And thank you, Olivia, Naidi, and NEVEART, and Ophelia, who just dropped, I think. It was a lovely conversation, and yeah, we are looking forward to your future successes. And of course, people can follow your successes on our platforms as well. And yeah. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anush. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.